Howard. I'm the author of the memoir Making Peace and the cookbook Ms. American Pie. I used to live in the American Gothic House in Eldon, Iowa, where I ran the Pitchfork Pie Stand. I've always believed pie can make the world a better place. Pie is the quintessential American dessert. It symbolizes nurturing, nostalgia, generosity, community, and family. From fundraisers to funerals, pie is what we turn to comfort us and unite us. Pie makes people happy, especially when it's a homemade pie that you share with others. The happiness that comes from making something with your own hands and giving a little part of yourself to make someone else happy, in turn makes you happy. This is a recipe for healing, for change, for building bridges, for peace, which is why the world needs more pie, a whole lot more pie. Recipe for healing, I'm setting off around the world, but what will I find? Will it be dangerous? Will something bad happen? Is world peace even possible? Can I make any difference at all? Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." I don't know if my trip will change anything, but I'm packing my rolling pin, saying goodbye to my dog and my parents, and circling the globe to find out. New Zealand is ranked by the Global Peace Index as one of the most peaceful countries in the world. I chose New Zealand because I make my apple pies with Granny Smith apples, and I wanted to learn about where they're grown. I also had an invitation from a woman named Grace. She knits prayer shawls the way I make pie and sends them to people to comfort them. Grace and I traveled south to Hawke's Bay, the country's largest apple growing region, but we made time to sample pies along the way. Our destination was the Yummy Fruit Company. The operation is run by Paul Painter, who is a fifth-generation apple grower. It was the off-season, so there wasn't a lot to see on the field tour, but there were plenty of apples to taste. Paul explained varieties like Sweet Tango, Smitten, and Lemonade. He also clarified that Granny Smith apples originated in Australia, not in New Zealand as I had thought. Before we left, Paul gave us 3 cases of apples for the pie class I was teaching the next day. At the William Colenso College in Napier, culinary instructor Brent Zimmerman offered use of his kitchen where 20 people spent an evening making a quick mess of it. But Brent didn't seem to mind, and we all pitched in to clean up afterward. New Zealand was only my first stop on my 3-month journey. I was off to a smooth start, and I was encouraged by seeing this group of Kiwis coming together, sharing an evening of creativity, pride, and laughter. I had 8 countries to go, but as I would learn, it wouldn't always be this easy or fun. Like New Zealand, Australia is one of the most peaceful countries in the world, partly due to their strict gun laws. Other countries would be well served to follow their example. One of the first things you notice here, besides the beautiful scenery, is that Australians love pie. Pie makes them so happy that the pies are smiling back at them. I stayed with my friend Kate, who accompanied me on my pie tasting tour of Sydney. Meat-filled hand pies make for easy fast food, but they're also so delicious that people line up for them. Pie doesn't always have a crust. The iconic Harry's Café de Wheels serves a version with mashed potatoes as the base, covered in peas and gravy. Another friend in Sydney, Fong, is a member of the Sydney International Women's Club. The club's mission is to offer friendship, support, and activities to newcomers of all nationalities. I was invited to one of their meetings to talk about my world peace mission and give a pie demo. But first we gathered several of the club members to help make pies for the event. I couldn't stay at Kate's for 10 days without offering a pie class to her family and friends, or mates as they call them. What made this class so special is that Kate's mom is in the early stages of dementia, and making pie together presented an opportunity for mother-daughter bonding. Time is precious. What better way to spend that time than enjoying pie? Kate has some friends who live on a small farm where a young wild wallaby stops by for feedings. I had the privilege of doing something that is maybe even more enjoyable than making pie. I got to bottle feed the kangaroo like baby. And then, like a wallaby heading into the wild, I was off to the next country. Apart from the traffic in Bangkok, Thailand looks peaceful from the outside. The people seem gentle by the way they greet you, bowing with their hands together in prayer. Even if they have their hands full, they bow. But just 2 months after I passed through, terrorists set off bombs in several temples, including the Erawan shrine right next door to where I spent my days. My mission in Bangkok was to bake pies for the American Embassy's 4th of July party for 1,200 dignitaries. I got a security clearance, and then, with the help of the baking staff at the Grand Hyatt Erawan, we made 75 pies. They were French-trained pastry chefs, and they worried about serving a pie with berry juice staining the top crust. I told them pie is not about perfection, and that this is what a homemade fruit pie should look like. They stopped worrying when they saw the #1 pie choice among guests was the blueberry. The event was a true cultural mashup, an American party with a state fair theme, attended by people in positions of power who can help make world peace a reality. Maybe the pie would persuade them to make a bigger effort. But my biggest accomplishment here was working together with a team of bakers, because we didn't just make pie, we built friendships. India is a country of extremes, from traffic jams to cows sauntering across the roads. Poverty and luxury live next door to each other. For example, I was given a room at the Four Seasons Hotel in exchange for teaching a pie class, but my window in the 5-star hotel looked down onto a slum. It was monsoon season, and the slum was getting pummeled by rain. But as I learned from visiting a slum, they can be thriving communities of productivity and commerce. Given that I was on a mission to promote world peace, it was imperative that I stop at Mahatma Gandhi's house. It is now a museum, and it shows where he slept, and the books he read, the causes he fought for, the statements he made, like this one: "Non-violence is the greatest virtue, cowardice the greatest vice. Non-violence springs from love, cowardice from hate. Non-violence always suffers, cowardice always inflicts suffering." Also on display was news of his assassination. Westerners flock to India's ashrams in search of enlightenment. But I came in search of pie, like samosas, and sweet pistachio-filled hand pies called gujia. After teaching 2 pie classes at the Four Seasons, I moved to the home of Deepa Krishnan. Deepa runs the award-winning company Mumbai Magic Tours. She sets an example of world peace through her work, which includes initiating rainwater harvesting projects in rural villages. As a cultural exchange, Deepa and her family fed me a home-cooked Indian feast. And in return, I taught them how to make pie. The love I felt from the 4 generations of this Indian family is the kind of nirvana you can't find in an ashram. Beirut used to be known as the Paris of the Middle East, but that was before Lebanon's civil war. That war ended in 1990, but a feeling of unrest remains. The country borders Israel and Syria, which is ranked last on the Global Peace Index, and keeping secular conflict in balance is an ongoing challenge. In Lebanon, you will encounter armed soldiers manning roadblocks. You will also hear French, Arabic, and English spoken, often a mix of all three in the same sentence. My host here was Barbara Masad, photographer, cookbook author, and humanitarian. During a cold winter, she wanted to help the Syrian refugees in the mountains and brought them soup. Her efforts resulted in the best-selling cookbook, Soup for Syria, with all profits going to help the refugees. My mission in Lebanon was to do what Barbara did with soup, but with pie. I baked a dozen pies to deliver to the largest refugee camp in the Bekaa Valley on the Syrian border. There you see evidence of globalization and, like in India, stark contrasts between poverty and wealth, like an upscale winery right next to the refugee camp. The Syrians didn't fully understand the symbolism of the pie. I even witnessed one of my pies being thrown into a ditch. But they were familiar with humanitarian aid, as they kept asking me if I was Angelina Jolie. I wish I were Angelina Jolie, because then I'd have a lot more money to help, and these people really do need our help. Barbara introduced me to the pies of Beirut, like lahmacun. This Armenian pie is made of paper-thin dough topped with spicy minced meat. And manouche, Lebanese flatbread slathered with za'atar, a seasoning of thyme, sesame seeds, and sumac. The Middle East continues to be a hotbed of conflict, and yet people carry on. They go to work, they shop for groceries, they go out for dinner, they even go to Girl Scout camp. Peace may be a difficult thing to achieve, but it's clear the majority of people in Lebanon want it. The American government issued a travel warning for Greece, telling tourists to avoid going there because the country was in the midst of a financial crisis. It was said that Greeks were so desperate for money, tourists were getting mugged for their cash. But I couldn't change my itinerary, nor did I want to. Pie is thought to have originated in Egypt in 6000 BC, but historians believe the Greeks were the first to make pie dough. Unlike the buttery, flaky phyllo dough of today, the earlier dough wasn't edible. Initially, it was a paste of flour and water they used to preserve and transport meat. I had heard the first recorded pie recipe could be found in Greece, etched on a stone tablet, and I was going in search of it. That was the plan, and yet the only thing I saw of Athens was the ceiling fan. For 5 days I lay beneath it, hallucinating from whatever travel bug I had picked up. Sadly, I wasn't able to indulge in the luscious pastries and the fresh Mediterranean fare. The only food I could keep down was rice. I appreciate the American government wanting to protect its citizens, but the travel warning for Greece was unfounded. The people were some of the nicest in the world. Switzerland is known as a neutral country, a bastion of peace. I didn't choose this stop to spread goodwill. Switzerland offers that up by the pound in the form of chocolate. I came here to recuperate from my illness and visit lifelong friends, the Kammer family. Uschi Kammer works for the Swiss Agency of Development and Cooperation in its humanitarian aid department. The Swiss constitution states the country should help alleviate hardship and poverty in the world, contribute to the respect for human rights, and promote the peaceful coexistence of nations and democracy, and the SDC is charged with implementing this mission. Uschi speaks 5 languages, and she uses them in her efforts to make the world a better place. Someone else who lived in Bern, who has made the world a better place, was Albert Einstein. It was in Bern where he developed his theory of relativity. I always say that pie heals, and in Bern, just looking at all the pies made me feel better. But I also ate healthy food and swam in the therapeutic waters of the Are River. We went up to the Commerce cabin in the Jura Mountains, where we spent a weekend making pie. Ushi's mother taught me how to make a monk's robe, a cored apple wrapped in dough with the apple's center filled with sugar, cinnamon, butter, and cream. In the spirit of pie, they invited other friends and family for an afternoon to share what we had made. Pie heals, but being with old friends was the medicine I needed. My late husband was German. It was the frequent flyer miles I inherited from him that made my round-the-world ticket possible. Marcus died at the age of 43 of a ruptured aorta, and even after 6 years, I was still grieving his death. I had lived in Germany with him for 3 years, and I was returning for the first time since his funeral. My first stop was a cabin in the Black Forest. It may be an enchanted forest, but Germany's dark history of Hitler and the Holocaust continued to hang over the country like a dark cloud. But to have world peace, we have to forgive and move forward. And doing something as simple as picking blueberries with this German-Mexican family is an ideal way to move on from the past. Especially helpful is being with young kids, to relish their enthusiasm and curiosity. The way they want to get involved and cooperate to make things, like pie. And to see how these kids have generous hearts, how they want to do nice things for others. This is encouraging. This is what hope for the future looks like. To instill good values in our next generation is to ensure a more peaceful world. I spent the anniversary of my husband's death with his cousins in Aachen. I've always liked the cousins, but our grief had caused us to grow apart. Pie, I reasoned, was an excellent excuse to reconnect. But before making it, I had to sample it. One of my favorite things about Germany is the daily afternoon ritual of having Kaffee und Kuchen. It translates as coffee and cake, but Kuchen is a catch-all word and includes pies and tarts. It's true what this postcard says. Life without pie is possible, but meaningless. I spent the next few days in the suburbs with Marcus's family. Gathering everyone together to bake, broke the ice, and once we were in motion, rolling dough and decorating our top crusts, everyone relaxed and forgot about our shared grief. The pie was too hot to eat right away, but they couldn't wait, so they got out the ice cream, which was the perfect way to cool it down. Lastly, Claudia and I went to the Aachen Cathedral and lit candles in honor of Marcus. Religions can be the cause of war, but their houses of worship are also a refuge of peace. And the cathedral was indeed peaceful. We said our prayers of gratitude, and then I said my goodbyes to Germany and to the family as I headed to my final stop. In Budapest, I stayed with American friends, Ron and Ryan, a gay couple who run the Budabab bed and breakfast. They were my tour guides and took me straight from the airport to a Hungarian food festival. Afterward, we worked off the calories by walking across the Bridge of Chains, the first permanent bridge across the Danube River which connects the towns of Buda and Pest. I was teaching a pie class at Ron and Ryan's, and the perfect place to shop for ingredients was the Great Market Hall. The best part about this historic market, besides seeing the abundance of fruit, cheese, and paprika, was eating rejtesh, the famous Hungarian strudel. Back in Ron and Ryan's kitchen, flour covered the floor and the scent of cinnamon filled the air as Americans and Hungarians joined forces to create edible works of art. Our homemade pie disappeared fast, so we went in search of more. Hungary's version of it is cake, irresistible cream-filled marzipan-layered cakes, and some with crumble toppings that they call pie. We also searched for something to drink. In the Jewish quarter, we drank beer at ruin bars, hip drinking establishments literally built out of buildings ruined during World War II. You sober up quickly when you see that the buildings and sidewalks have name plaques. The plaques immortalize people who were killed by Nazis but had no relatives to remember them. Remnants of Hungary's troubled past are still visible, and yet, emerging from the ruins of war, like the budding leaves of spring, there are signs of hope everywhere, signs of humanity's wish for world peace. The world is round, like a pie, and I've come full circle. It's impossible to measure any impact my journey might have had. Instead of spreading peace, it seemed I had left only violence in my wake as acts of cruelty and terrorism continue. Maybe I need to change my definition of what world peace means, because what I learned is that even in the face of turmoil and hardship, there is happiness and love. Maybe world peace is simply a collection of moments. World peace is about people treating each other with kindness and thoughtfulness and taking care of each other. It's about empathy and understanding. I am only one person and there is only so much I can do. But I hope my experience, along with this humble film, will inspire others to reach beyond their little corners of the earth. Making and sharing pie is a good place to start, because after lugging my rolling pin for 30,000 miles and making over 200 pies, I believe more than ever that pie can make the world a better place.